Topic 2. Lesson 2. The Pharisees. The Pharisees were one of the most prominent and influential sects in Jewish society during the time of Jesus. They held a unique and complex role within first-century Judaism, marked by their devotion to the law, Torah, emphasis on personal piety, and dedication to moral conduct. Often depicted in the New Testament as antagonists to Jesus, the Pharisees were, in reality, a diverse group whose beliefs and practices reflected and shaped the religious landscape of their time. The Pharisees emerged as a lay movement focused on religious renewal and were distinct from the priestly elite who led temple worship. Their rise can be traced back to the centuries following the Jewish exile in Babylon, a period during which the Jewish people faced cultural and religious threats from various foreign powers. During this time, the Pharisees positioned themselves as guardians of Jewish identity, emphasizing purity, community ethics, and adherence to the Torah as a means of resisting external influences. Unlike the Sadducees, who were predominantly members of the priestly aristocracy and focused their authority within the temple, the Pharisees were primarily lay people, teachers, scholars, and scribes. They did not derive their power from the temple, but instead from their commitment to the Torah and their ability to interpret and apply it to everyday life. Through this approach, they gained significant influence among the common people, promoting a way of life that was accessible, practical, and deeply intertwined with Jewish identity. A defining characteristic of the Pharisees was their reverence for what is now known as the oral Torah, a body of interpretations, traditions, and teachings that expanded upon the written Torah. This oral tradition had developed over generations, offering guidance on how to observe the law in practical terms, encompassing everything from dietary laws to rules regarding the Sabbath and ritual purity. The Pharisees believed that the oral Torah was as authoritative as the written Torah itself, arguing that it allowed for the Torah's timeless teachings to be adapted to new contexts and preserved for future generations. Pharisaic scholars and teachers devoted themselves to studying, interpreting, and transmitting these oral teachings, which provided detailed insights on how to lead a life in accordance with God's will. For the Pharisees, the Torah was not merely a set of rules, but a means of fostering a close relationship with God. They believed that every action, no matter how small, could be an opportunity to honor God through obedience and purity. Their teachings encouraged ordinary Jews to observe laws that were traditionally reserved for the priesthood, such as certain purity regulations. This democratization of religious practice brought the sacred into everyday life, creating a culture of personal piety and devotion that went beyond the walls of the temple. In the Pharisaic worldview, righteousness was not solely the responsibility of the religious elite, but a duty for all who sought to serve God faithfully. The Pharisees also held distinctive theological beliefs that set them apart from other Jewish sects. Unlike the Sadducees, who rejected the notion of an afterlife, the Pharisees taught that there was a resurrection of the dead and that people would be judged by God in the world to come. They believed that God would reward the righteous and punish the wicked, which lent a sense of moral urgency to their teachings. This belief in divine judgment and an afterlife added depth and motivation to their call for piety, suggesting that one's actions in this life would have eternal consequences. In addition to the resurrection, the Pharisees believed in the existence of angels and spirits, viewing the spiritual realm as an active and influential force in human affairs. While the Pharisees were deeply committed to preserving Jewish identity and autonomy, they maintained a moderate stance toward Roman rule compared to more radical groups like the Zealots, who advocated violent resistance. Although the Pharisees resented the foreign occupation of their land and the erosion of Jewish sovereignty, they prioritized religious and spiritual integrity over open rebellion. By channeling their energies into personal and communal observance, the Pharisees sought to preserve Jewish culture without risking direct confrontation with Roman authorities. This pragmatic approach enabled them to retain influence even under Roman occupation, as they directed the frustrations of the Jewish people into religious life rather than political insurrection. Despite their popularity and influence, the Pharisees often found themselves at odds with other Jewish groups. Their most pronounced theological and social tension was with the Sadducees, who held power in the Jerusalem temple and dismissed the Pharisees' oral traditions as human inventions. The Sadducees rejected many of the Pharisees' theological beliefs, including the resurrection and the afterlife, leading to ongoing disputes about the nature of faith and authority. The Pharisees' emphasis on oral tradition and personal piety also contrasted sharply with the Essenes, a separatist sect that withdrew from mainstream society to live in isolated ascetic communities like Qumran. While both the Pharisees and Essenes valued purity and observance of the law, their approaches diverged. The Pharisees chose to live among the people, engaging with society to bring about renewal, while the Essenes distanced themselves to await divine intervention. The Pharisees' interactions with Jesus, as portrayed in the Gospels, are marked by both areas of commonality and significant points of conflict. Like the Pharisees, Jesus was dedicated to the Torah and shared their concern for justice, mercy, and faithfulness. However, he often challenged their interpretations of the law, accusing them of focusing on external observance at the expense of inner righteousness. Jesus criticized the Pharisees for imposing strict regulations that, in his view, burdened people unnecessarily and obscured the essence of the law, which he saw as rooted in love, compassion, and humility. Despite these criticisms, the Pharisees and Jesus shared a mutual respect for the Torah, though they disagreed on how its teachings should be applied in daily life. In the years following the destruction of the Jerusalem temple in 70 CE, the Pharisees' teachings and interpretations would provide the foundation for rabbinic Judaism. With the temple, the focal point of Jewish worship, gone, the emphasis in Jewish religious life shifted to the study and observance of the Torah in synagogues and homes. The Pharisaic values of moral teaching, personal piety, and devotion to the oral Torah became central to Jewish life and thought, profoundly influencing the future of Judaism. The Pharisees' contributions laid the groundwork for a form of Judaism that could survive without the temple, adapting to new challenges and ensuring continuity through study, prayer, and community practice. In conclusion, the Pharisees were a deeply influential group that played a critical role in shaping Jewish society during the time of Jesus. They embodied a commitment to living out the Torah in everyday life, blending religious faith with moral conduct and community engagement. Their teachings, interpretations, and debates left a lasting impact on Jewish religious thought, providing both a foundation for later rabbinic tradition and a meaningful point of dialogue, and sometimes contention, with Jesus himself. The legacy of the Pharisees endures as a testament to a rich tradition of devotion, interpretation, and the pursuit of righteousness that continues to resonate in Jewish life to this day.